Today, I'm joined by Kevin Lynch from the Block the Shot the Stop podcast to discuss, well, the Cavs. From our favorite moments pre-All-Star break, how DeAndre Hunter is going to fit in, what they're going to do with the open roster spots, and what we're looking forward to in our expectations for the home stretch of this season, as well as perhaps the most important question. Are your Cleveland Cavaliers real NBA title contenders? Hi, I'm Zach, and welcome to the Sports Ethos Cleveland Cavaliers podcast, your safe space to celebrate and nerd out about the Cavs. And when I say nerd out, you know what I'm talking about. We're talking hoops, backed by stats you've actually heard of. To join the discussion, just use hashtag CavsCast on social media. Here's me and Kevin. Today, I'm joined by Kevin Lynch of the Block the Shot the Stop podcast. What's up, man? How's it going?
Hey, Zach, man, thanks for having us on. I'm glad you've come on our show a couple of times, so I'm glad to return the favor and talk about some hoops, man. It's been a while. It feels like forever since the Cavs have played.
That's because it's been forever since the Cavs have played. It's a feeling that you have earned.
Yes.
Embrace it.
I know, and I'm excited to get on your show. We're very much a fan podcast and everything, and you affectionately call yourself an NBA nerd. I do as well, so ready to nerd out with you.
Yeah, for sure. So I wanted to start with that, and you sort of just answered it. So this could possibly be very short, but I wanted to start with your podcast. As you mentioned, you all did you invited me on your podcast before this podcast actually existed. So I guess I owe you everything. My whole platform. Is that how that works? Not totally sure.
No, not at all, man. We our podcast is called The Block the Shot to Stop. For anybody who hasn't listened, we are very much just a celebration of Cavs basketball and what a year to celebrate and talk about the NBA. You know, we get into the weeds a little bit, but Zach and I connected in one of the Cavs online forums and told me about his show coming out, and I invited him to come on ours kind of as a, way to, advertise his new show coming out and everything. And I've listened. I'm a fan. You get awesome guests on. I'm humbled to be one of your guests.
None bigger. So we've got a couple of newsworthy things that we can hit here real quick before we get into the meat of our discussion, which really is just a kind of an exploration of the Cavs season that has happened and moving forward. And I think we'll get to kind of the final big question of, whether this team's a real title contender or not. But that'll be a little bit later in the show. First, I wanted to hit on a couple of these things. First being the Cleveland Rockers in 2028. That's apparently going to be a thing. Are you excited?
I am, man. I mean, women's basketball is having more than a moment. They're having it is a thing now. Like we were talking about, Caitlin Clark might be the most popular basketball player under 25, men or women's or something. So I think it's awesome. And I, as a father of one daughter, about to be two daughters, I love celebrating women's sports. So happy for Cleveland and hope all the fans support the Rockers same way they do the Cavs.
Yeah, I'm also a girl dad, and I'm stoked. I adopted the Fever as my team back when they drafted Kelsey Mitchell.
Oh, okay, cool.
I believe that was 2016. There wasn't a lot of opportunity to follow them all that close because they were real bad and the WNBA was not popular at all.
Yeah.
But for, some strange reason last year, they all of a sudden became quite popular and it was very easy to see their games. I can't remember why was that? Oh yeah, they drafted Caitlin Clark. That's why. So that obviously made it a lot more accessible.
Yeah.
And I've definitely been more I've been more attuned over the past, I'd say 3 years. I have progressively gotten more and more engaged in the W. And last year was, I watched more women's hoops last year than I have in my entire life. So that's been fun. But now with the Rockers coming into play, I guess I have 3 years to figure out, do I keep my allegiances to the Fever? Or do I have to jump on the Cleveland bandwagon? Does this become a Cavs and Rockers show? I truly don't know what's going to happen, but I am excited about it.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same dilemma with you, except I am actually I've always been a bit of a Chicago Sky fan. I live in Chicago now. I did previously when the WNBA was first developed. My brother actually worked for the Chicago Sky for their first inaugural season of the WNBA, which is almost 20 years, like 16, 17 years ago now. So I was at WNBA games like that first season when it was a much different game, much less popular. And I'm the same. I mean, I'll I guess debate switching allegiances or maybe splitting my allegiance. But I think Cleveland's going to really enjoy being a part of the WNBA, and I wouldn't be surprised if the city really swelled around the team.
I think it could. I mean, obviously it would help if they were fairly competent.
Right,
But
of course.
we'll see how that goes. But I mean, I did a video on on my YouTube channel before this pod existed on how you could become a fan of the WNBA and really any sport, but I used the W as my example. I think I have developed the best formula to get into a sport, and it actually involves being locked into a team that you choose. Well, I don't have to go through the whole thing, but it's a team that you are a fan of. And then there is a team that is like a front runner that you just follow. And then a player that you just pick that's not on your team to follow. And if you do those three things, then you're going to be able to really like absorb that league in a kind of like a meaningful way, and also have a rooting interest kind of in everything that you do. And if you've got a front runner that you're following, you at least have an excuse to watch the most meaningful games that happen in that sport. So I think the Rockers could fit into one of those things while you still get to follow the Sky and whoever else, or whether it's Caitlin Clark or whoever, to do that. So yeah, that's not really a plug or an advertisement or anything like that for the W, but you've at least got two people that are excited about this team forming.
That's right. And I was gonna say, I love that you send me like incredibly detailed notes for the show and then just went riffing off the first one. You didn't put anything about the Rockers in your notes.
Yep, exactly. That's how we do. Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse is now Rocket Arena, which I guess matters and is also only going to be confusing when the Houston Rockets come to play. So sure. Any thoughts?
Absolutely none. Couldn't care less. Like I think it's a great arena, stadium, court, whatever to see a game. That's all I care about. Call it whatever you want.
Yep, pretty much. That covers that juicy topic. So just as a heads up before we get into the main topic of the show, and that is more Lonnie Walker stuff, so not relevant to the Cavs. If you didn't get enough to satisfy your let's fix All-Star weekend debate, you're not getting it today here either. But quickly, if you did happen to skip or miss out, the Cavs highlight Cliff Notes version would be Mitchell and Mobley won the skills competition. Darius Garland made the finals, but did not win the 3-point competition. Donovan Mitchell's team beat the Evan Mobley and Darius Garland team in their head-to-head matchup on Sunday, and the Kenny coached team won the whole thing. You're now up to speed. I got nothing else for you today on that particular subject. If you want to hear how you can fix it, listen to like every NBA podcast for the past 3 days. Cool?
Cool with me.
All right. So, Kevin, what has been your favorite part of the Cavs season so far?
It's tough to pick a favorite. I mean, winning the first 15 games out of the gates, and as the momentum just kind of like grew and grew and grew from that. I remember when they handily beat the Warriors in Cleveland, in whatever their arena is called now. That I think was about the 8th or 9th win in a row. That was one of my favorite, and I'm totally going to cheat because I'm going to give you like 3, but like that is when I really think everyone around the NBA starts paying real attention to the Cavs, because now they're 8-0, 9-0. They beat one of the kind of name teams in the NBA like by 20 plus points. So I loved that. My my favorite game of the year is the first game against OKC when they beat them. Ironically, my
Good
least favorite
choice.
is probably the second time they played OKC.
Also a good choice.
But just like that was so I'll go with that one. First game against OKC because so much hype leading into that. And I actually thought the NBA did a really good job of promoting those two teams as like
Yeah.
the, two of the not only young and up and coming, but the young and they're here teams, and promoted the matchup for the 2 or 3 days leading up to it. Obviously, it's on national TV. And then the game delivered. The game was fantastic. Both teams played really well. The Cavs pulled it out in the end. So I thought that game was not only so great as a Cavs fan and Cavs podcasters as you and I are, but just like the quality of the quality of the game equaled all the hype that went into the game, and the hype was done really well too. So if I'm gonna go single favorite moment, I will go that first OKC game.
Yeah, and I think that had a huge impact on the All-Star stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of started a wave where you could see it even in the fan voting, where Cavs guys were just starting to creep up the list in each of the next waves of voting updates that we had gotten. And the fans ended up being lowest on the Cavs of the whole kit and caboodle. The media liked them best, and then there was the players that also had them ahead of the fans. But just watching Cavs guys start to get dropped in there, it's like, oh yeah, that's what happens when ESPN actually starts promoting your team.
Right.
Fans actually start caring about your team. The casual NBA fan, not the Cavs fans. We've been here the whole time, but it was clearly impactful, and I think that Oklahoma City game was big for that. For me, I think my favorite part of the season has honestly been Darius Garland.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fairly blanket statement, but just after last year, how bad it sucked.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that he had to actually like go through and overcome, and the noise of the offseason, just to have him come back out here and bounce back the way that he has been incredibly fun for me. He's also grown in doing that. He's a better basketball player, not just like, oh, he's as good as he was before like he broke his jaw. He's a better basketball player. I think what he's doing in the clutch is just completely insane. He is the clutch player of the year, in my opinion, at this point of the season. I know some people will argue Jokic as that guy. I will argue Darius Garland in that conversation, and not as a homer pick, but just because he's been so good. And for me, he's even more fun to watch now in the Kenny Atkinson system than he was when he was doing just like high pick and roll stuff under JB. And it's been that combination of growth and like joy for me. I've said this a couple of times now in various spots, but when I watch him play this year, I get like flashbacks to 11-year-old Zach laying in his bedroom floor watching Allen Iverson in the finals against the Lakers. And Allen Iverson was my guy. And so like, it's that giddiness that I'm starting to get more and more with Darius Garland. And I love that he's showing his personality and showing how good of a dude he is too, while also showing he's got a little bit to him in the trash talk department and the standing up to the other team in those chippy moments department, that I'm loving to see that kind of edge to him start to come out too. Just everything about what I'm seeing from Darius Garland, literally just numbers aside, because those are good too, but just from the eye test, I just love watching Darius Garland play basketball.
You couldn't be more right. I actually made the argument maybe 3 weeks ago or so that I thought the wrong Cavs guard was starting the All-Star game. I actually think Darius Garland has been the Cavs MVP to this point. I think he has grown in just about every facet of his game. I think he started out the year, I don't want to say sacrificing, but like kind of making the components of the team work, and then slowly became more and more assertive with his offensive game. I think he's putting in more effort defensively than he ever is, but you could say that about, Mitchell and several other guys too. So I agree with you. Can I throw a couple more at you real quick? Because there's a lot of favorite things about this season.
Throw as many things as you want at me.
All right,
I just
just
hope
got
that they don't
two.
hurt.
I got two more, and I think they're and I'll try and do them quickly. But I didn't really think of it as like favorite thing this season as like an individual player. But when you said that, I would say Ty Jerome, because I don't know if there's anyone in the Cavs that has exceeded expectations as much as Ty Jerome, or possibly anyone in the NBA. This is a guy who only played a couple of games last year. I want to say he averages about 6 points for his career, never been given anywhere close to the opportunity that he has this year, and has found, and coming into the year, one of the big questions of the Cavs is who's going to be the backup point guard? Is Mitchell going to be the backup point guard? And he has come in and just asserted himself unbelievably well. I think he has been the fifth most important Cav after the big four so far this season. And he kind of wasn't on anyone's radar. Even Cavs fans, I would bet most Cavs fans would say they wouldn't even think Ty Jerome would be a rotation player this year. And that now frankly, he should be in the voting for sixth man of the year. So at least on the board, in my opinion. The other favorite thing I'll say, and this is a little bit more general, but I think you'll get it, is one of my favorite things about this year is just the vibes of this team. This team, we've talked about before, it almost has the feel of a college or high school team, the way that everyone is giving off so much energy. They're incredibly serious, but also having a ton of fun in the process. They pick each other up incredibly well. They have an extremely active bench, which if you look around the NBA, there are a lot of benches are just kind of sitting there most of the time, light applause. I just think the vibes around this team have been so fun, and that's part of what's made it so fun to follow them and contributed to their success.
I completely agree with that. And that was actually why when I had Spin Davies on the pod, I literally just wanted to do that episode about the vibes. I'm like, tell us about this team, because from the outside looking in, it looks like they're having the most fun of any team ever. And I think that it's contagious for us as viewers through the TV screen.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't get to go into the locker room and ask these guys questions and see them in their actual quote unquote natural habitat.
Mm-hmm.
Are the vibes really this high? And the answer was yes they are, and I was stoked to have that conversation. It's on the feed. If you want to go listen after this one's over, go give that one a spin. See what I did there?
well played.
All right, so the next thing I wanted to get your 2 cents on, because we haven't had honestly, I don't think we've had a conversation about this since it happened.
Okay.
But it's obviously a big part of the Cavs pre All-Star news cycle, and going to be a huge factor moving forward down the home stretch here. And that's, how does DeAndre Hunter in your mind fit in with this group?
So I think I've heard you talk about the DeAndre Hunter trade. I don't know if you have heard me. I think have slightly different impressions, but I'll give you mine. I think best case scenario, he's the perfect fit for this team. He having an athletic big wing guy to match up with some of the better, small forward, power forwards in the league defensively, as well as, his 3-point shooting. I think there's a little bit more to unlock offensively that he didn't really get a chance to when he was with the Hawks. So I think best case scenario is this is a home run trade. I don't think it's necessarily a home run, partially because 3 reasons. One, I don't like buying high, and DeAndre Hunter is far and away having his career year. So you're buying kind of high on him. This could be him now, but that's the lesser of my 3 reasons. The real things that I hesitate about are he's going to make a lot of money he signed for 3 or 4 years, but he makes a lot of money, and he averages missing almost 30 games a year for his career. And I know this fan base loves to get on Dean Wade about his availability. Dean Wade averages playing 53 games a year. DeAndre Hunter averages playing 53 games a year for their careers. So a little bit the money, a little bit the durability, I think are the two biggest things that like worry me, because you can get away with Dean Wade missing 30 games a year because he only makes $6 million a year. Doesn't eat up much of the salary cap. DeAndre Hunter eats up 22 million of the salary cap. So if he's missing that much time, could really hurt not only the quality of your roster, but the depth of it.
I can totally get on board with most of what you just said. One, you say buying high. I think you're buying high in terms of how he's playing, but I don't think the price was high. Like, I think they got him for a steal. So to me, it's not really like, to me, when I think about buying high on a guy, I think about having to give up more assets to attain him. And I don't, I was shocked when it came back, like what they gave up to get him. I thought it was going to cost more, quite frankly. Honestly, I didn't even think he was going to be on the board because of how well he was playing this year. And the fact that they got him, but not only got him for way less than I thought the price tag was probably going to be. I was surprised by that. So I'm less concerned about that. I am concerned about the health issues. I'm not concerned about the money necessarily, because I think that that's just what a quality 3-and-D player in the NBA costs. And I think, to your point, you can afford Dean Wade missing a lot of time when you're paying him $6 million a year. You can't afford Dean Wade missing a lot of time, regardless of paying him $6 million a year, when he's your only like big versatile wing on the roster. And so you didn't just go and get Dean Wade insurance. You got a Dean Wade upgrade to the point where now Dean Wade is the insurance. And they're also like, they should be compatible to play together when they are healthy. But you hope you hope that at the very least they can be available at times that the other is not, and you have some coverage for each other at the very least. But then also, I think what the Hawks have uncovered so far this season has been interesting. When I was talking to the Sports Ethos Hawks guys, they talked about how once he starts playing like north of 30 minutes in a night, that's when his knee starts to swell up. That's when he starts to have problems. And that's why they've been bringing him off the bench as the sixth man this year, to keep his minutes down in that like 28, 29 minute range before he starts having knee problems. It's been keeping him healthier, and he's playing better. And I think even if you start him with this Cavs group, the one thing that they've done is keep minutes low for everyone on the roster all year long. So I think you still, as long as you keep him at that, like, even with this group being more deep and just quite frankly a better team, I think you can cap him 26, 27 minutes and help alleviate some of those injury concerns. Not all of them. Like, you can still get hurt playing basketball, and guys with injury histories are definitely a problem. But if the Hawks were onto something there and it really does, conserve him in a meaningful way, I think that's a big, I think that's a big thing that the Cavs can learn from to keep him healthier too. But it's definitely a concern for me, 100%. But it's no worse than a Cam Johnson would have been. It's to me, it's better than not only having Dean Wade, for sure. I think he's a major upgrade. I think his fit could be absolutely perfect, with this team. So, and again, for the price that was paid, I feel like it's a home run swing, but everything is theoretical.
For sure.
Nothing, nothing is guaranteed.
Yeah, and I'm with you. The what they gave up, like, is not impactful. Like, to me, I agree that you make this trade 10 times out of 10. Like, this, because you gave up 2 rotation players that could, frankly, the way things are going, could have been potentially squeezed out of the rotation come playoff time. And the draft picks, to me, don't really matter, because it's a fake first and then a bunch of fake couple first and some second rounders.
Well, yeah,
So
those first round swaps were already swapped.
right. So if anything, you're going to move down like a couple draft positions, if that. It's inconsequential. But I think what this trade does, I think there's a good chance it could hurt the Cavs in the regular season going forward the next couple of years. And raise their ceiling in the postseason. And the reason I say that is because George Niang, for everything he's not, he is one of the most reliable role players in the NBA. He has become that. He did not miss a game with the Cavs in over a season and a half, and to me was a very solid contributor this year. Everyone knows Karis LeVert has been phenomenal for the Cavs at times. At other times, has struggled, including some of this year. But between those guys, I think you might get more regular season production out of them, but Hunter like increases your potential in the playoffs because he gives you a dimension that neither of those other guys provide, and frankly is kind of a redundant skill on this roster.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of the roster, it is currently not full.
Yep.
I believe what I saw is they have to fill that one spot to get to 14 by Thursday. They can do a 10-day and
Mhm.
kick the can down the road, but and I assume that is what's going to happen. So it gives them a chance to see how more of the buyout market actually shakes out. They've got until March 1st before they have to sign a buyout guy and have him actually be eligible for the playoffs. So I mean that's your kind of like that's your cutoff date if you're going buyout. And then I can't remember. I think they can do 10 days still if they had to, which would put them past that March 1st. So like they've got the wiggle room, but I'm basically treating March 1st as like that's
Yeah.
their date. And so we're gonna know, we're gonna find out. But when they do more permanently fill that roster spot and potentially the final one too, right? Like because they are too shy of the maximum roster allowance that they can have. What would be your top priority for filling it out?
So my idea is, I think, not what everyone's thinking, but a lot of people are focused on like, let's try and get another big man off the buyout market, right?
Mhm.
I don't think any big man that's out there now or that's going to come available in the next 2 weeks is going to make any real difference for the Cavs this year. So like what I would want to do is convert one of the two-way guys to a 3 to 4 year super reasonable contract, and develop them and basically follow the same success that the Cavs have been having with guys like Dean Wade, Sam Merrill, Craig Porter Jr., because these bringing on a two-way guy at a super cheap contract locked in for years is what this roster is going to need as it gets more and more expensive, especially this summer. My choice would be JT Thor, because I think JT Thor is an incredible talent, whether he ever puts it all together. But I don't know if JT Thor was given 12 minutes a night in the rotation, I would bet that he would contribute more than any buyout big man on the market right now. I think he's much more talented than anyone, and he's younger and more raw. But that's what I'd want to do. That's what I want to do. Unless if something unforeseen, if somebody comes available that you wouldn't expect to be available, and the Cavs can get them, by all means, go do that route. But if that does not come up here in the next 10, 12 days that you're talking about, I would convert one of the two-way guys, and my choice would be JT Thor.
Yeah, I think you can do both though. Like I from a cap standpoint, and I was talking to Luca from Real Cavs fans
Mhm.
about this, just about the numbers. They've got the flexibility underneath the luxury tax now that they can sign a vet minimum on the buyout market while still converting one of the two ways to a more like longer term
Mm,
deal. And so I think you're probably right that that's one of those roster spots that they fill and happens. But to me, I think it's the 15th. I
yeah.
think it's that final one. I still think they're going to try to find something on the buyout market. And I think, but I do agree with you that right now, there's not a big man out there that I feel better about than JT Thor.
Mm-mm.
And I mean, does Mo Bamba move you? You know, like, I wanted Daniel Tice. He went overseas. I was
Yeah, wild
iffy.
move.
Yeah, I was iffy on the Ben Simmons idea, but I understood the basketball fit, but that's not a possibility now. I wanted them to get Torrey Craig, to be honest, but the Celtics did. And now, like, I know we have a fantasy in our fan base of reuniting with a guy like Larry Nance, but I'm not seeing anything that suggests he's actually gonna get bought out. Quite the opposite is all I'm reading now, which means it's gonna happen because people don't think it's gonna happen. That's typically how that one goes. I know Clint Capella's name is one that like Luca threw out there as a real possibility. I have not seen anything that makes me particularly confident that he's gonna get bought out. But
Right.
if he did, I mean that would be yeah, do that. If you can get him as your third big, great. But I don't see it. And I do wonder though, I wonder with that being the case, if there's not a better like third big option, if it doesn't solidify JT Thor as that guy that you convert, and then maybe you do use that like buyout, vet minimum deal to like get another get another wing guy on the cheap that's a veteran, maybe a guy like a Robert Covington or something like that, a guy that's kind of like been around and might be able to help you in a pinch if you've got a spot minute that you need, if you've got 6 fouls that you just need on a Jason Tatum or something, and in a situation, a guy like that could contribute, and JT Thor become that like backup big solution if a better one doesn't come available. But it doesn't look I think that's why we're not seeing a ton of chatter or hearing a lot of names is right now there's not really anything to get particularly excited about
Mm-mm.
on that seems imminent at this point. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm with you. And people get so worked up about the buyout market and all this kind of stuff. Like there has been almost zero examples of someone who was acquired after being bought out that was a big contributor to a playoff team's success, right? So, and people keep saying we need extra big, we need extra big. Well, a lot of the times the Cavs play with only one of Mobley or Allen in the lineup, and if you need that extra big in case both Mobley and Allen are injured or in foul trouble or something, I hate to say it, Cavs aren't going anywhere if both those guys are unavailable. So it doesn't really matter
It's a
what
fair
big
point.
you bring in. So I would rather, yeah, of course, if somebody that could truly contribute, like a Clint Capella, totally agree there. If they become available and you can get them, go for it. Otherwise, I'd like them to invest in one or maybe even two of these two-way guys that they seem to really like and have had success, doing that in the past.
JT Thor and Luke Travers. What are we doing here? No.
Yeah.
Real quick, I'd like to ask podcast listeners to go ahead and leave a 5-star review in whatever app you are hearing my voice through right now. If you want to go the extra mile and you're on Apple Podcasts, you can add something nice in a little review. It'll make me feel all warm and fuzzy, and I'll appreciate it a whole lot. And you'll also be helping the show grow. So the next place that I want to go is more macro, more looking forward. What are you most looking forward to down the home stretch of the season?
My biggest thing that I talked about is how do the Cavs play coming out of this break? And I mean like the first 10 games, 8 to 10 games coming out of this break. Because if in the first 10 games they can go 8-2, I think Boston's going to, and New York, if they're close enough, are going to take their foot off the gas, and Cleveland can cruise to that number 1 seed, get guys the right amount of playing time versus rest going down the stretch. So the number one thing I'm looking forward to in the second half is what happens in those first 10 games, because I think that's going to dictate what happens the last, 4 or 5 weeks of the season. If the Cavs can go 8-2, 9-1, and Boston, doesn't play quite as well, I think it'd be a great thing for the Cavs. Everybody knows the number one seed is incredibly important to the Cavs, more so than it is to Boston or New York. But if they can not only get the number one seed, but get it, and get it wrapped up early so that they can kind of prepare themselves for the playoffs as far as both playing time and rest goes, I think that would be an incredible advantage for the Cavs come playoff time.
I think it's interesting that you said that you think the Celtics and the Knicks could take their foot off the gas. I guess if the Cavs really came out firing, that is a possibility. I'm interested to see, because I think Boston might have a run in them down the stretch. They came into the All-Star break on a 3-game winning streak, one fewer than the Cavs, which, by the way, was the most in the Eastern Conference. Just, let them know. But if the Celtics, if it's true that what the main narrative that you've heard around the Celtics, or the explanation or the expectation of the Celtics has been so far this season, is that they're bored. They're in the title hangover. They have we're better than everybody else, and we're just trying to coast until the playoffs. If they're that team, if that's really who they are, I could see them potentially wanting to start ramping up towards who they're going to be in the playoffs and getting themselves into playoff mode a little bit. And I think on the other side with the Cavs, while I agree if they could go on a run coming out of the All-Star break and really just put the hammer down and lock up the 1 seed, that would be really helpful. But I think that Kenny is going to keep minutes low. I don't think he's going to go away from what he's been doing so far. I think they've always had kind of that eye on longevity and that final, that playoff mentality, I guess you could say. I don't think he's going to get out of that. And I think they also could be tinkering a little bit. They're going to be trying to integrate DeAndre Hunter and figure out what his best role is with them. And he is the type of player that is just impactful enough. He's not going to take shine away from the core four, right? But he is just good enough that it could take a minute, right? He could need to find his footing with the ball in his hands and figure out what he does and when he does it, in terms of trying to get to his own bucket, or, sometimes he's probably going to be hesitant to shoot and he's probably going to overshare. There's probably going to be other times where he's just trying to shoot himself into a rhythm or so. There's going to be some growing pains to that integration, I think, that could impact the win-loss column in the regular season, kind of coming down the stretch. And if the two things happen at the same time, I don't think that we can just assume that 5.5 game lead over Boston is safe. If they go on a run and the Cavs are also trying to figure some stuff out before the playoffs start, and that's where their focus is, as opposed to throwing heavy minutes at guys just to make sure they win games and keep the 1 seed, I don't know that it's totally safe. And I think you're right that this first 10 games coming out of the break could be largely impactful towards what that outcome ultimately ends up being.
Well, yeah, because it's at some point it just becomes a math problem. There's just not enough time left, right? Because as you said, let's just round up and say it's a 6-game lead for the Cavs, right? If there's 20 games left and they still have the 6-game lead, that means Boston, even if they go 16-4, they have to hope that the Cavs do no better than go 500. You're basically hoping that a team that is currently 44-10 goes 500 the last 20 games of the year. So I truly believe, especially because of, how good of a team Boston has and how much basketball they played the last several years with these deep playoff runs and everything. 3 other guys were in the Olympics last summer. I think they'll say it's not worth a slim chance at the number 1 seed. We're going to back off and kind of let him go. And to your point, not only would it be great for the rest and down the stretch and trying to, figure out how exactly DeAndre Hunter fits into this team, but also like Isaac Okoro and Dean Wade have been out for a while. And these are guys that, by all indications, are coming back, and if they are back, they could quite possibly be very important players come playoffs. So you have to reacclimate those guys and then figure out how the rotation looks and everything. So it would be great if Kenny could figure all that stuff out while having what feels like a very safe lead in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, they've definitely got themselves in a good position, right? Because chances are, knock on wood, that they should at least continue winning at a high level. They may not continue winning at the ridiculously high level that they currently are, which, what is it? It's like 80. What is their winning percentage? Math isn't mathing, and I don't have it in front of me. It's like 87 something.
Yeah, I was going to say it's 85, 86, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like they may not continue to do that, but in theory, I do think that the 1 seed is very much in like their control.
Sure.
Right. But I don't think it's a foregone conclusion depending on how this goes. And really what Boston, how much of a push Boston tries to make while Kenny's trying to figure some of this stuff out. But really what matters is the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So is this Cavs team a real title contender?
Absolutely. Of course. I mean, like, and that's not even a homer. If a team can win 86% of their games in the regular season, have 3 all-stars, have one of the deepest and quality benches in the league, they are a title contender. They might not be the number 1 title contender, but if you're I think going into the playoffs, there's usually 5-6 teams that have a realistic chance of winning the championship, and they're going to be one of those 5 or 6 teams.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think they are. I don't know if you want to call it an asterisk or whatever, but I do think that Eastern Conference Finals should be the goal. If they make it there, this was a successful season. It is an improvement over last season. It is linear growth that has continued over the past several years. And you've still got a window that should be open over the next couple of years with your core locked up financially.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if you make the conference finals, you are, in fact, a title contender. Like, you have a real shot at winning the whole thing if you're one of the last 4 standing. But they're also not all created equal. And I think that's kind of what you were getting at when you said they may not be the number 1 title contender, right? Like, I think there are teams like Boston, like Oklahoma City, possibly even Denver, and maybe the Knicks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if they get into those series, it's possible that the Cavs are not the betting favorite going into those series. But if they win those series and you're shocked, it's because you haven't been paying attention to the Cavs play basketball. So I don't think, even if they're an underdog in one of those series, that they shouldn't be considered a viable contender to be the last team standing this year, because they are that good. But it's understandable too to take off my Cavs hat, which I'm not going to do because it's currently what would happen with my hair, and also the headphones and all of that is just, nobody wants to see that. But if I take off this Cavs hat for a minute, I also don't think that it is completely unfair or somehow disrespectful for the Cavs to have this kind of overarching narrative that they've had, in the idea that they need to prove it in the playoffs. Like, sometimes it is disrespectful. Sometimes the way that take is presented is disrespectful, and that's not what I'm talking about. But what I'm talking about is every great team in the NBA has had a label at some point in time. Yeah, they've been great, but I want to see them do it in the playoffs. And they are still young. They're not one of the youngest teams in the league, but their core is very young, particularly with, how important Darius Garland and Evan Mobley are to it. So I think it's okay for them to go into some of these series and not be like, yep, it's going to be the Cavs. Like, no, to a certain extent, like, people are going to want to see it before everybody jumps on the bandwagon. And I'm okay with that general narrative because I think it also could light a fire and kind of keep a chip on their shoulders and keep them motivated throughout, feeling like that underdog, and
Yeah,
not get complacent.
yeah, I agree. And but I guess I'll say it a little bit different way than you. Like, expectations change as a season goes along or a year goes along in whatever in life. I think now I think it's very fair to say the expectations should be the Eastern Conference Finals this year.
Yeah.
Because if they do secure the number 1 seed, which they have an incredibly good chance of doing, I don't think there's anyone else in the Eastern Conference they should lose to outside of New York or Boston. And they would only have to play one of those teams and it would be in the Eastern Conference Finals. And so I think it's fair to say that should be, that should be the expectation. And if they reach the Eastern Conference Finals, they've kind of met expectations, and then they could potentially exceed expectations by making the NBA Finals or winning a championship. I think they have an incredibly good shot. I'm with you. Kind of history in the NBA tells us like the smart move is to go with the team who has been there before and won before until the new team actually establishes themselves in the playoffs and makes that leap. Right. So all that's to say, I think the Cavs are absolutely contender. I think they're one of the 3 teams in the East that have a legitimate chance of winning the NBA Finals. I think they're probably going to only have to play one of those teams. And if they can get through them, then you go to the West. The West has several really good teams led by the Thunder, but none that are like 2016 Warriors type team or anything. They're not like a team that seems unbeatable. So yeah, I mean, I think it's very fair if Cavs fans say like, we're as good as the season has gone, our expectation is now the Eastern Conference Finals, and then let's see what they can do from there.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by Eastern Conference Final. Like, that's a successful season, and anything other than that, we should have a level of disappointment. Now, in terms of like how it all shook out, does that mean that this whole season was not super fun and we shouldn't be excited that we had? No, if the only outcome is one team's fan base is allowed to be happy at the end of every NBA season, I push back against that a little bit. But I also, to the narrative of having to prove it in the playoffs, we haven't had a repeat champion in like, I can't even remember what it's been, like 6 years. Like, it's been a long time since we've even had somebody repeat. So it's not like it's not like we should be shocked when somebody new, has a shot at it. And I think the Cavs have as good a shot as any of them. Kevin,
Yes.
Plug all the things.
Plug all the things. So everything is based around our podcast, the Block the Shot to Stop. I talked about early in Zach's show. We do a pod after every game. Usually right after the game, if not the next morning. We usually do an extra episode every week with a guest, somebody that's smarter than us, such as Zach we have on. One other thing, and I'm happy to plug, we're actually doing our first live show here pre-game for the Portland Trail Blazers game on March 2nd. We're going to be at Southern Tier Brewery right next to whatever the arena is called nowadays. So if you are considering going to that Trailblazers game on the 2nd, come have a beer with us before the game, and we'll have some merch and to pass out and some fun conversations to be had.
Even if you're not going to go and you're just in Cleveland, go to the live show.
Yeah, for sure. Love to we will talk your ear off about Cavs basketball, and if you're somebody that wants to have that conversation, come by. Would love to meet you.
Sweet. Thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, thank you.
If you're on YouTube, let me know in the comments section, what are your expectations for the rest of the season for this Cavs team? And now that the episode is over, go ahead and open up your app store. Download the Sports Ethos apps for one of the best blurb feeds in the business. Fantasy tools, Cavs player, news, alerts, it's all available for free in the Sports Ethos app. As always, I'm Zach. That was Kevin. Thanks for nerding out with us, Cavs fans.